Hello everyone, my name is Meet Shah. In this video, we're going to cover how to create a hybrid iOS and Android mobile application using Ionic Framework and Cordova. I'm also going to share with you the GitHub repository that I have set up that you are seeing on the screen right now. It has a blank Ionic Cordova project with iOS and Android platforms. It also has a build configuration file that we can use to create Apple and Android IPA and APK files for the development and for the production using the command line tools. So we'll be using Android Studio command line tools to create APK and the Xcode command line tools to create IPA. So to get started, first we want to make sure that we have all the right packages installed in our machine. Uh, to start with, very first is a Node.js. Um, so I'm going to fire my command line and you can do node-v. If you get the version back, that means you have the node install. If you're not sure, if you think your node.js is old, or if you're a first-time user, you can use this link. It takes you to their website, and you can download the latest one, latest from their website. The second one is the JDK. So you want to do Java version and you should get the Java version back. Again, if you get error or if you get command not found, or if you think your Java version is too old, here is a link. It will take you to the Oracle website, and you can download the latest JDK. You want to use the Mac OS one for the Mac platform. The third one is the Ionic and Cordova. You can do Ionic dash V. Sorry, I should put the space in between. Ionic dash V, and it should give you the version. And you want to do Cordova dash V. And it gives you the version back. Okay, so again, if you get the command not found, or if you're a first time user, here is the command that you want to use to install Ionic and Cordova. It does both at the same time. So um, to create our Ionic Cordova project, the Gradle and the Android Studio and the Xcode is when we want to build APK and Android. So to install the Gradle, you can use a brew install Gradle. If you don't have a brew, you can download Homebrew from their website. Um, Android Studio, again, if you don't have it installed, here is a link. You can download the latest one, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to download and install completely. Um, for the Xcode, again, if you don't have it, you can go to your App Store, search for the Xcode here, and the very first one will give you the latest one. So you can just install it from here. Um, so the next step is we want to configure the SDK tools for the Android Studio. So once you get the Android Studio installed, the configure and go to SDK manager, um, and under SDK platform you want to make sure you have the latest Android API installed, and then go to SDK tools and you want to make sure the Android SDK build tools is installed uh, in your machine. It doesn't install the SDK tools by itself by default, so what you want to do is come to SDK tools, select, click apply and OK, and it will install it. And this is a path where it installs SDK tools. So that's the very first step we have to do after installing Android Studio is to install SDK tools. Um, Next step is to accept the licenses. It's something that comes with Android Studio that they want the developer to. There are like 6 licenses that we have to accept. So for that, you want to go where your SDK tools are. So there'll be your user. In my case, is Meet library Android. SDK. All right, and here you want to do tools, um, bin SDK manager, dash licenses. So you can see all SDK package licenses are accepted. It comes with total 6 licenses. So if you're doing this first time, it's going to ask you, do you want to review the licenses? Then you can say yes, and it will you have to do like press Y, and just go one by one and just accept all of them. It's pretty straightforward. Um, the third thing is we have to set the Java home and Android home environment variables. For that, you want to open your edit your bash profile. You can use the Vim editor, or you can use the nano. If we do nano here, bash profile. So if you follow all the instruction up to here, then you can pretty much copy this whole section and paste it in your bash profile. Basically what it's doing is setting the Java path, Android SDK as a path variable, and the Gradle, wherever it install the Gradle, is setting as a Gradle home and as a path variable. Once you install it, once you edit your bash profile, uh, you can get this control X. Okay. Um, so that will take care of the Android Studio and the SDK build tools. The next thing is the Xcode command line tools. So if you install the Xcode for the very first time, when you open it, it will prompt you to install Xcode command line tools. So just say yes or okay, and it will install it in your machine. So the purpose of using the build tools is that we are not going to use the Android Studio and the Xcode user interface to build our IP and APK. We'll be just using command line tools. And the benefit of doing is that you can write the shell script, or you can configure this whole thing with your CI/CD pipeline, for example, the GitLab pipeline, which where you cannot use the Xcode user interface. So you have to use Xcode command line tools to build IPA. So that's why setting these variables and SDK tools will help us down the road. So once we have all the installation complete, what we want to do is start with creating the new Ionic Cordova project. Um, so you want to, I want to, I'm at the Android SDK path, so I want to go back to my root directory, and what I'm going to do is call Ionic start, name of the app, so change the name to whatever it fits your project description or title, and you can put tabs. If you're not sure which kind of app you want to create, you can just hit Ionic start, and it will give you different options like tab based application, or the blank, or the side menu view controller. We can just start with a blank, and it says, do you want to integrate Cordova? Just say yes. Ask you to use, if you want to use Ionic Pro SDK, I'm just going to say no. So our project directory is created. I'm going to go inside, and if you do ls, you can see all the default files that comes with it. Next thing we want to do is add iOS and Android platforms. We're going to add the Android platform. And it's done. So before we go to further, we want to make sure that we can run our Ionic project locally. So for that, we're going to do first npm install. Before we do that, let me open this project in the editor. You will open this file. So this is our file, and once we do npm install, it's basically going to go through your package.json file and it's going to install all these dependencies and the Cordova plugins. So let's go for npm install. And when it's done, you want to do Ionic Serve. Ionic Serve is going to basically build your project and is going to fire the browser with a local host 8100, and you will see the default index.html page loaded on the browser. So that will confirm that our project is set up properly, and you can just go from there and start building the new pages. So you can see it started localhost 8100, and this is our the blank very first default page. So far so good. I want to terminate the Ionic Serve and build our job and to create IPA and APK. So the way we're going to do is we're going to first create the Android development or the debug version of APK, and then we will do the Apple development IPA, and then we'll create the Android the production APK and the Apple production IPA. So here's all the instruction. This is for first for the Apple, so we'll skip that. We'll go to the Android. For the Android, they need APK to sign using our own keystore, but that's only for the production. For the debug, we can just use Ionic build Cordova Android command. It doesn't require to pass any configuration, or it doesn't require to sign using keystore. Here is the official link on Ionic website that lists all the build commands. You can see Ionic Cordova build and platform, which is option is Android or iOS, and here is all the flag that you can pass to your build command. So here's a few example here. The very first that we're going to try is Ionic Cordova build Android. It's going to create the debug APK. And these are all these different flags if you want to create for the production one. So let's do Android debug APK first. Ionic Cordova build Android. Okay, so you can see it created the debug APK. If I go to our project directory, under platforms, Android app build outputs APK and the debug. So that's our very first Android debug APK that you can install on any test devices or in a simulator. Um, so next thing we want to do is create the development version of IPA, and for the Apple it's a little bit lengthy process because Apple require your development IPA to be signed using the keychain request and with the code signing certificate, and you have to register the app ID, and you have to create the provisional profile, and you have to put all this together to create IPA. and you also have to register test devices. Only those registered devices can install your the development IPA. So we're going to quickly go through all these steps. Um, if you're a first-time Apple developer account user, here is a link. You can go to create Apple ID. If you already have it, you can just sign in, and you want to go to certificates, identities, and first thing you want to do is go to App ID, and we want to register the App ID here. So back to your project file, you want to go to config.xml, and you want to change your widget ID to something that is relevant to your project. So I'm going to come to admit Shah, Ionic build one. So we want to make sure that the widget ID match our app ID that we're going to register here. I'm going to name it Ionic app build one. Put your bundle ID, keep the default, and click continue. Just go with the default. Done. And now we have app ID here. So next step we want to do, back to our GitHub repository. So we want to create the code signing certificate. So for that, we have to first create the code signing request. So we're going to need our keychain. Once you open a keychain, you want to go to your certificate assistant and go to request a certificate from certificate authority. And put your email address, name, and go to save disk. And you can save it to wherever you want. Desktop, click save. Click done. So now we want to go back to the Apple account. Go to the certificate section and go into the development one. And I'm going to add a new one. Select iOS app development because we are doing first for the development. Click continue. It's going to ask upload your signing request. Choose a file and choose your code signing request. Click continue and done. So that's our iOS development certificate. You want to double click on it and install in your machine. It will install in your keychain. So back to your development. So you want to make sure the one in the keychain match your expiry date here, which is January 11, 2019. So once the development certificate is created, we already took care of the app ID. We already updated the widget ID. The next thing we want to do is create a provisional profile. So back to our Apple account, under provisional profile section, go to development and click the new, click create, select the iOS app development, select your app ID that we just registered, um, and select the development. So I have two, and it doesn't show which one has which expiry date, so I'm just going to select both. This is your registered devices, test devices. You might have more than one or none. Then Ionic app build one provisional profile. Click and download. So we want to make sure that once we download it, we double click, and so the Xcode will install it in our machine. So when we will use the command line tools, it will able to read the provisional profile. So that's all we need to create the development version of IPA. If you want to create the build.json file in our project, and it's going to have the the code signing, identity values, the provisional profile, that we want it to use, and the development team values for the debug and for the release one. Similarly for Android, as I said, we don't need any key store for the development, but for the release, we're going to need to create our own key store. So this build.json file will be like one file that will hold all these values. So it's nice to manage it. So go back to our editor and we'll create a new file, and we can just copy this whole thing here. So ignore the release one and ignore the Android for now. So we just need these debug values right now. How to build chart.json. Okay, so the code signing identity we saw in a keychain, it says iPhone developer, so we're going to keep it iPhone developer. The provisional profile ID, we need to look up the one that we downloaded recently. Open it with your text, not in Xcode but in your text editor. And you want to scroll down and go to your UEID. So grab this value and update it here. And for the development team, you also want to make sure that it match the value here in the team identifier. So whatever the values you have under team identifier, just take it and paste it here. And we are developing for the development version, so we're going to keep the package type as development. So once we have this ready, we can go to our command line, and we will need, so for iOS development, similar to Android, Ionic Cordova build iOS, but we're going to pass the flag called like use our build.json file as your configuration. So take this command and we're going to paste it here. Build is complete. We can go to our build files and verify that you create the IPA. Go to iOS platform, build, device, and you can see it created the IPA with our name of our project, Ionic app build 1.ipa. Total size 4.9 MB. So that's our two development files, one IPA and one APK. So next thing we want to do is create a release version of APK, or the production version of APK. And to submit the production APK to Google Play Store, Google requires us to sign our APK using our own key store. So first we have to create the key store, and then we're going to use it to sign our APK. So here's a command to create the key store. I don't want to create inside my project, so I'm going to start a new terminal, and so you want to rename your key store to something that is relevant to your project. So instead of my Android release, you can say my Ionic app build 1 release keystore, and you also want to change the name of the alias to Ionic app build 1 release alias. Okay, and it's going to ask you for the password. It's going to ask you a few names, details, Misha, ABC, XY, XYZ1, now the city, Chicago. I'm just going to put any values here. Illinois, United States. Just say yes. And now it's asking, do you want to use different password for alias? So if you just hit enter, it's going to keep the same password, use the same password as the keystore. So now our keystore is created here. My Ionic app build release 1. So once it's created, we want to go back to our build.json file, and we want to make sure we update all these values to match to whatever we just enter. So um, you want to put the path wherever you create your keystore. So that'll be my username, and you can just copy the whole name here. My Ionic app build 1 release keystore. That's the password I used. For iOS, it's make sure it's the same as. So my Ionic app build 1 dash release dash ls. Okay, and I use the same password, so I can just copy it here. So ideally, you don't want to put your password here because you don't want to commit it with your project files. So what you can do is you can eventually use this command here, Ionic Cordova build Android. These are the flag for the production build, and you can pass your values here in your command line, and those values you can pass from your CI/CD pipeline as a secret variable. So any developer who is working on this project, they don't see the password, or they cannot change the password and commit it, otherwise it's going to break your build. So once this value is set, we can run the production build command for Android, which is same one, but we're going to pass the flag, hey, use our values from this file, and dash dash prod and the release, which are basically the command that you're telling Ionic that I am building this app for the production one. So back to a project file. I'm going to run the command. The release APK, if you go back, I just want to show you where it says it use our. So this is where the build process started, and It found our Android home variable and the Java home variable, and it's reading the configuration from our build.json file, and it's found like using it needs to use the keystore from wherever the location is. So at the end, you create a APK. So if you go to a project file, Android APK, the platforms, Android app build, outputs, APK release, and the app release or APK. So you can see the debug APK was created. It had a 4.2 megabytes, but the release one is in kilobytes. So that's something that Ionic does when we pass the prod and release flag, that it really does quite a bit of optimization and create the production build. So that's our release APK ready to submit to the Android Play Store. You want to make sure that the key store that we created, um, you save it somewhere, the copy of it, as well as you have to remember the password for it, because when you will create the next release for APK, Android Play Store requires that every subsequent build have to be signed using the same key store. So just make sure you put it in a safe place. So that's our production build for the Android. So the last step, we need to create the production IPA. So similarly, what we did for the development, we need to follow the same steps. Um, so we'll go back to our Apple developer account, and we don't need to register a new app ID because we already registered it, but we do need to create a new certificate and new provisional profile for the production. So this time we're going to choose a production, new, like App Store and ad hoc under the production, and click continue. It's going to ask us to upload the signing request. We can use the same signing request that we use for the development. Click continue and download. And once you download, double click on it, so it will install in our keychain. So similar to iPhone developer, which had a January 11 date, we can see the iPhone distribution with today's date. So that's our iPhone distribution code signing certificate in our keychain. Next thing we want to do is create a production, it's called the distribution provisional profile. So create a new one, go to the App Store, the distribution, select the App Store. If you are creating the enterprise app that you plan to release only to a specific user, you can choose ad hoc. In this case, we're just going to choose App Store. Click continue, select your app ID, select the distribution. I'm just going to select the one that we just created and name the file Ionic app build one provisional profile. Oops, the wrong spell. It's fine. And we want to make sure we double click on it so Xcode will install it. Now we have to update, similarly what we did for the debug, we have to update these values for our provisional profile. So the code signing identity remains same, the iPhone distribution, but we need to update the provisional profile ID. So we'll go to our download folder. This is our I'm going to open it with our text editor. I'm going to close this old one here. So for the distribution, select the UUID and update it in your build.json file. Also make sure the team identifier, use new value. The package type is App Store. Again, I said if you're creating the ad hoc app, you want to change it to ad hoc. So for us is App Store. So this is in place. We can go ahead and run our production build command, which is basically same as a development. Plus we're going to pass two new flags to tell Ionic that I'm building for production one. Going to our, I don't need this one now. Go to our project directory, Ionic build iOS. Okay, so you can see it successfully created the IPA. If you go to our project files, Ionic app build, platform, iOS, build, device, and created a new IPA for us. It's a 2.2 megabyte. So one thing you want to note down here is this is something wrong with Ionic, that when you do the production IPA, it overrides your development IPA. So you can see our new IPA created on 10:33. It's like a minute before. It doesn't do it for Android. So if you go to Android platforms, under app, build, outputs, APK, and you can see it created two separate folder, one for the debug, and it keeps the debug APK, and when you do the release, it does the release APK, but it doesn't do for iOS somehow. So just keep that in mind. Say when you do release, it's going to overwrite everything you did for development. We successfully created the development and the production version of IPA and APK. If you like the video, please subscribe to our channel. If you have any issues, feel free to put the comment. Also, if you want to open issues, you can visit the GitHub repository and you can open the new issue here, and that way I'll get notified and I can take a look into that. So hope you like our video and you have a very nice day. Thank you.